So tell me now about the rise of. No, I've known about anti-science outside of medicine because it's not so much anti-science, but pseudoscience that permeates. But if a person is susceptible to pseudoscience, it seems to me they'd be susceptible to anti-science because pseudoscience are ways of thinking that conflict with mainstream scientific thoughts and understandings of the world. So, where did you first see your medical anti-science?
Well, Neil, first of all, you've been a role model over the years for how you can battle and debunk a lot of the pseudoscience. So I often follow your cues, and you were actually an inspiration for me to get involved in this, for which I have to pay you back somehow,
No, no,
because
just pay it
now
forward.
I've become public enemy number one with
Oh,
anti-vaccine groups.
oh, that, yeah,
So
it comes with the territory. Let me
yeah,
tell you.
right. Well, what happened was, I have the original assertion against vaccines rose in the late 1990s with false claims that vaccines cause autism. And so I have four adult kids, including Rachel, has autism and intellectual disabilities, and wrote the book, Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism,
Back
which
in
does a
2018.
deep dive explaining why there's no link between vaccines and autism, the science behind it, also what autism is, how it begins in early fetal brain development through the action of autism genes. We did whole exome genomic sequencing, and Rachel, my wife Ann, and I, and laid it all out there. And it was a very powerful book, I think, and it helped a lot of people, but it also wound up making me public enemy number one or two with anti-vaccine groups. Our friend Robert F. Kennedy Jr. started publicly labeled me the OG villain, and I'm so old and square I had to look up what that means.
What OG means, yeah,
The
original
gangster
Yeah,
villain.
yeah.
So thanks for inviting the OG villain. But it was meaningful. I did find it meaningful, and now I realize if you're in the in trying to make vaccines for hookworm vaccines and new COVID vaccines like we're doing, this is also part of it now, countering the anti-vaccine activism. The problem was it took another level. It actually started before the COVID pandemic, but it really accelerated, which became a political enterprise linked to political extremism on the far right. And you started to see, and this is where it gets really tough, because as you know, Neil, all of our training as scientists is we don't really like to talk about Republicans and Democrats and liberals or conservatives or red states or blue states. But what do you do when the people refusing vaccines overwhelmingly are in red states? And the study showed from Charles Gaba and others that the redder the county, the lower the immunization rate and higher the death rate, so much so that David Leonhardt of the New York Times just called it red COVID.
Wow.
It's a killing force. So 40,000 Texans in my state of Texans died because they refused a COVID vaccine during the Delta and BA1 wave after vaccines were widely available, and 200,000 Americans overall. And that's why we have to talk about it, because anti-science is no longer just kind of this theoretical thing. It's actually
It's
a
politically
killing force,
linked.
and
Yeah. So,
not small numbers.
but we can separate the variables, as we say in mathematics. My understanding was, and we explored this in the film Shot in the Arm. This is written and directed by Scott Hamilton Kennedy, as a documentarian. You were prominently interviewed in that film. I served as script consultant because there's a lot of science getting communicated, and I advised on that. And then I got promoted to executive producer. Last time I agreed to that, because that was the whole thing.
It was.
But anyhow, in that we explored the fact that there are two separate variables here. One of them is, are you anti-science because you hate big pharma or whatever? And another one is, you can't make me get a vaccine because I'm American and I'm free, and freedom. And so one came from the right, from the left, the other came from the right, and they met on the other side of the fence because they both had the same objective. So I presume you've seen both of these camps, right? And they require different solutions, even though their goals are the same.
And it's changed over time. We used to say the anti-vaccine movement was a product of as you rightly point out, the extreme left and the extreme right. On the extreme right, it was health freedom, medical freedom. You can't tell me what to do. On the extreme left, it was, peace, love, granola. We have to be, careful what we're putting into our kids.
And eat your herbs, and that'll cure your.
And the stuff on the left has somewhat dissipated, not entirely, because you still see a lot of people peddling nutritional supplements, linked to the anti-vaccine movement. But it's mostly the killing force, the one that killed 200,000 Americans, overwhelmingly is a product now of the far right. So you've got and it's tough to talk about. You've got members of the House Freedom Caucus, calling people like me medical brown shirts. That's the term they use. I'm using Nazi analogies, pretty horrible stuff. And you've got, two U.S. senators, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, holding vaccine injury roundtables, and Senator Rand Paul targeting science and scientists. You had the CPAC conference of conservatives. First, they're going to vaccinate you, then they're going to take away your guns and your Bibles. And as ridiculous as that sounds to us, people accepted it in my state of Texas. And then the real tough one was Fox News amplifying it every night. And this was documented by two groups, Media Matters and a research group out of Switzerland. The nighttime Fox News anchors every night falsely discredited the